What's up everyone, Lance Hedrick here, and today we're going to take a look at the Stone Espresso Machine. Now this machine has been out for almost 2 years now, and I've had it for well over a year at this point. I just never really got around to making a video, but that changes today. I've done some extensive testing on it, and I'm ready to kind of share my thoughts on the machine. First, I want to take a look at where this kind of fits in the market, who's it for, what's the purpose of this machine, who's it made by. Then I want to take a look at actually how it creates espresso and talk about the temperature, talk about the extraction itself as well as the steam, and then we'll open it up, talk about build quality, and finish with kind of an internal look at the machine itself, so you have kind of a holistic picture of what this machine is and what it's aimed to do. This machine is actually a company from Rocket Espresso. Yes, that Rocket, the E61 famous Milan-based Italian company. The idea here is it's not giving you the traditional E61 group, which all of their other machines, except for the R58, I believe, a kind of sport. Something that's a little bit different that you won't see on other machines, which we will obviously be talking about. They also wanted a smaller footprint, so something that's much more narrow, a no frills, high quality made espresso machine. So this is just a pressure gauge to show you the pressure inside the steam boiler itself. Then you have your group head. You have an actuator with a micro switch behind. Then you have the steam knob, or the steam square, whatever you want to call that, and an on-off switch. There's no control you have other than starting the shot and ending the shot with controlling the micro switch right here at the top. In order to make it small, they didn't have room for a rotary pump. Also, the budget wouldn't really allow for that, I'm sure. The cost of this machine varies greatly around the world, so it's hard for me to give you one price since I have kind of a global audience here, but it sits around that $1,000 to $1,300 mark, depending on which style you get. There's some that are more minimalistic, like the Stone Light, which I believe sits right around that $1,000 marker. This one is the Stone Pro. So you have these like side panels that come off, along with a couple of other minor things that kind of increase the price a bit. But overall, they're pretty similar. You have just some aesthetic differences that are the main differentiations between them. When looking at the machine, you can tell that it is mostly all metal. From the looks, the only things that aren't metal are this kind of actuator on top. This is actually one of the ugliest things ever, and considering you touch this every time you brew, that is a huge letdown for me personally. I absolutely despise it. Even this little key part on top that holds it in, and then the knob right here is plastic as well. I mean, come on, you have this great feel with the switch. I really enjoy the switch, but I mean, that's Little League. Come on, that's not excusable. There are two parts in here that are not obviously metal. One is the actual inside of the drip tray, which is this abysmally small little piece of plastic. I guess it'll force you to keep clean, but it's pretty, pretty cheapy little drip tray there. And then of course the water reservoir in the back is plastic. But other than that, it is made with really high quality metals. And that is something that a lot of other machines can't say in a similar price range unless you get up to like the Lelite Mara X, which is obviously an E61 with all these types of parts as well. Quick heating, small footprint with a stylish design that is not just all chromed out, stainless looking traditional machine. So on the side you have these panels that can be switched out with different colors. So this is something that they find to be really nice, and a lot of consumers have been looking for something like this, and every year they kind of release new colors that you can buy, and you can just flip off the magnetic sides, put them back on, good to go. You also obviously get a split shot portafilter. Not ideal, but because it has that E61 style fitting inside, you can put other portafilters in, like my Weber Unifilter. Boom. This is just a standard 58 millimeter portafilter. Comes with my Unica Pro. We just toss that in. Fits. Let's pull a shot of espresso, and we'll talk more about it. All right, let's get this going. No timer on the machine, so I'm using the timer on the scale. Come out the other side, come on. This can just be, it's preferring one way as it's coming out of the split. There we go. So this is a flat 9-bar machine, so it's vibrating, and it's gonna oscillate between like 8.95 and 9.05, somewhere around there. So we're about 20 grams out with an 18-gram dose. We'll stop it here in a little bit. 38 out in 40 seconds. Yeah, it's a long shot, but I didn't dial it in. I just wanted to show you this before we continue kind of chatting. So you may be thinking, is there pre-infusion? Well, no, there's no way to control anything. The boiler itself is not PID control. It is controlled by a pressure stat. There is a PID controller in the group head for a cartridge that does the final heating, and that is at a set temperature that you cannot change. Water enters from the reservoir using the vibratory pump into the boiler itself. Inside the boiler, which is about a 1.7 liter boiler overall, and it has about 0.8 liter space for steam, they have a thermosyphon kind of loop. It's like a coil that looks like this, and then it goes out of the boiler with the two arms of it. So inside the steam boiler, obviously it has a 1000 watt heating cartridge in there. It's getting up to 130 Celsius or like 265 Fahrenheit, which builds around, 1 to 1.5 bar pressure, which is a little green area on the manometer down here. So we're right in that area. But inside you have that thermosyphon that's taking water and it's heating up to a much lower temperature, around that 75 degrees Celsius. And then as it travels to the group head, it kind of flash heats it at the group with that extremely powerful cartridge up here to give it to its final temperature. You get incredible thermal stability with this machine, especially for what it is. It was actually very shocking for me understanding this isn't a dual boiler with PID control system without a saturated group. Technically, it is, I guess you can say it's cartridge saturated, but there's no boiler sitting on top of it. So over time, I did see a drifting of the temperature going upwards, but it wasn't anything like an E61 where you need cooling flushes. It's still good. When you have an even distribution, even if it takes a really long time, it's going to be decent. It's not the greatest shot in the world. I definitely need to coarsen the grounds up. Coarser is life. But, hey, this machine's now been on for like 45 or 50 minutes, so I think it's about as good a time as any to scase the bad boy up. Before we do that, I'm going to just quickly test the flow rate coming out so you have a good idea. Being a vibratory pump, I'm going to imagine it's around 5 to 6 grams per second or mils per second. Let's just see it anyway. So the flow rate looks to be, that's a little higher than I thought. Nice. Oh, wow. Good. I like high flow rate. It's topping out at 7.5 grams a second. Very nice, very nice. All right, we'll stop. 9 seconds to get to a static flow rate. So that means during the early wetting of the grounds, you probably have a lot lower water debit coming out, but it does have a peak of about 7.5. I doubt you'll ever hit its peak because the only time you would get to is during the early saturation phase, and it takes about 10 seconds to get there. So maybe you'll see it for half a second before you meet resistance. Now it's scase time. So of course this is a cooled portafilter, but I'm using the canal, which is very thermally dynamic. It's got almost no mass, so it should heat up rather quickly. So I don't need to sit here and wait for it to heat up a ton. And then I'm going to just run some water through so that we can heat up the actual mass, the thermal mass that actually has the probe inside. Then we'll read some numbers. All right, so even on the first one where everything was cold, it got up to 93 degrees at about the 10-second mark. So we let some go in. We'll just go ahead and start over now that everything's kind of nice and toasty. And here we go. So pretty immediately it jumps up to 93, 94. Stopping at about 94, and now it goes down a bit. We'll let it run for a bit, just like it kind of shot would, and then we'll pull another. Because during the normal course of a shot, the puck kind of degrades and the flow quickens, I would imagine due to that, the temperature actually wouldn't start to go back up. Now it's rising slowly. I think that's one of the built-in flaws of this scase, where it has a constant aperture that you can't really change. You're not getting a quickening flow coming out. That's why I kind of like the other, the TPD sensor, because you can change the valve. The issue with the TPD is they don't have anything inside the basket to emulate a puck, so you have some trade-offs there. Anyway, we're just going to use this and kind of go with it. Let's say you prepped another shot you wanted to do back-to-back. Let's see roughly where that would be at. So this time it shoots over 94. We're up to like 96. And now we start to drop. And now it starts to build back up. So it kind of oscillates between those. Now what I'm going to do this time is I will do kind of a cooling flush to see if that's going to help drop it, because we obviously saw like 1.5 degrees or so bump. So let's do a quote-unquote cooling flush. See some of that steam coming off? But the idea is you shouldn't have to be doing cooling flushes, right? And even still, we go up to 97, 98, and we start to drop again. And then it does the climb, like Miley Cyrus. All right, so as you see, there is a consistent kind of going up in the temperature, and I think a lot of that's just because that thermosyphon is sitting in the steam boiler, and as it has kind of restricted flow coming out, it's going to heat it up a bit more. As water, goes through this cartridge slower, it's going to heat up more and more at the group, and that's one of the issues, again, with the aperture on this, is you're going to have kind of that slow feed coming out, and it's going to spend more time on those heating cartridges that are trying to pull the temperature up from inside the thermosyphon into the actual group head itself. I don't think this is necessarily as reflective of your shot-to-shot pulling as it could be. I think it probably would not drift that much going up due to the fact that your espresso won't be emulating this exactly. You're not getting a constant, like 1 milliliter a second flow rate coming out. You have an expanding, a quickening flow rate coming out. So for funsies, we'll do one more to see if it does continue that trend up. But anyway, here we go, and on. So it topped out at 98 here. So those two in a row were topped out at 98. And then it bottomed, and then it kind of climbs again. It does tend to stay pretty thermally stable, but again, you do have this fear of increasing temperatures over time. This is giving you something with a restricted flow throughout, and that's not a real world situation, but what is real world is seeing the stability once it does top out. So once it tops out and you see that stability, it's showing that the PID controller in the group head is doing its job, and the pressure stat in the boiler is doing its job as well. So let's test some of the steaming. In their manual, it says to let it steam out for like 5 seconds to break a potential vacuum inside so milk isn't sucked back in. If there is no vacuum breaker on this, that is kind of a lame thing. Without that, if the vacuum does create inside, it could suck milk into the machine and mess the boiler up. Elementary, my dear, 2 + 2 is 4. How it goes. Then we'll steam some milky. Here we go. Won't be as much viscosity because, again, it's lighter coffee, but there we go. I'm not using a scale, it's a milky. It doesn't really matter. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it does, but I don't really care right now while filming. Okay, so there we go. We got our Spro. We're gonna set that to the side. We're gonna steam some milk. You can steam and you can pull at the same time. I just didn't because I'm filming, but you can. And it's not because it's a dual boiler, it's because it's kind of like a modified heat exchanger in a way. It's always super weird steaming on camera, but we're gonna do it. Show you anything is possible. All it is, it's about that angle, 1/2 1/4, and then tilting it in order to get the proper whirl. And we're just going to slightly stretch till it matches the temp of our hand. And then guess what? We just whirl it out, baby. There we go. When it's too hot to the touch, you start hearing that sound pitch. And we got the silkiest of milky all around. Everyone keeps talking about my silky milk. I got my silky milk. I got my silky milky. Whee! I should have swirled the espresso. There was a little bit of clumpiness in the espresso, which is why I have those weird lines on the side of the art. I'm retired. I don't really care. It's still nice. Now we're going to take this bad boy apart. So let's just pull it to the center. You take the panels off like so. They make these panels all the same way. That way they don't have to make 2 different panels. And they label where you put the proper magnetic pieces. 304 stainless steel, solid as mess, all right? We got one panel off. Let's get the other. We took off the back panel, which is held in by the 4 screws, which connect to the side panels. So you have a screw for the back panel, and then you have a screw to get onto the frame. They give you these little, I guess, brass little pieces as a spacer. It's a very annoying piece to put back on. The cool water does pass through this like plasticky rubber tubing, and then when it's hotter water, goes through the copper piping. Right down here, an OLAB vibratory pump, as stated earlier. Honestly, it seems they could have made the machine even smaller. There's quite a bit of empty space inside, so you could probably take off a few centimeters from front to back. A nice insulated boiler, which is always preferred. And then back here you have kind of the nervous system of the entire thing. So it's very simplistic. Not much electronics going in here, not much to do because there's no controllability. So if you notice right here, there's a little tube that goes up, right? For, you know, it's a breathing area, a breathing way. Sometimes you might get an airlock on your pump. This does happen, and oftentimes you'll need to kind of take one of the tubes that feeds into into the pump itself, and you need to push air through with like a syringe or something. I mean, I don't recommend this at home, but I just use it as a straw and blew, and the machine started right on up. A little puff puff right there, and we were good to go. We were in business. And then they also add, right on the back right here, the solenoid directly on the back of the group head itself. Of chrome-plated brass that is 3.5 kilograms in weight. Hefty group head with that heating cartridge that's 200 watts inside, and again, a 1,000-watt cartridge inside the boiler itself. So you have the thermosyphon inside the boiler, but it's not like the typical thermosyphon going into an E61, where on an E61 group head, you have a tube going into the group and a tube coming out. The thermosyphon loop is more so, it's inherent inside the boiler itself, and there is no exit from the group head, so it's not thermosiphoning into the group like it does on an E61. The reason for that on an E61 is to ensure that the group head is hot. Since this has a cartridge, it's not necessary. But there is the thermosyphon unit inside, which we'll show a picture here that was shown in a fellow YouTuber's video where he was talking with one of the people at Rocket or at Stone. So that thermosyphon is to keep the temperature a lot lower than it is in the steam boiler itself. I need the boiler open to really have a better understanding of how they're able to achieve not overheating the water inside and keeping it at 75 in order to flash heat at the group. The biggest qualms, my biggest issues with this machine would be the cord underneath. You need to loosen the feet in order for them to be taller for the cord not to get kind of stuck under the machine. But if you loosen the feet, then they get really loose and they can fall out. In fact, I misplaced a foot because I didn't realize it had fallen off. It's a weird thing. In addition to all of that, the water tank itself is pretty small, which I know will annoy a lot of people. I like that. I don't want there to be a ton of water in here getting stagnant, sitting there for many days just because you're too lazy to fill it up often. So I say that's actually good. I think a lot of machines have too big of reservoirs unless you're doing it for commercial purposes. There is no plumbing option for this, so no commercial purposes. You don't need to do flushing, cooling flushes, and so as we saw, it doesn't even really help with the fluctuating temperature. Don't waste water flushing. It's as simple as that. I think it is a well-built machine, as can be seen from the insides. I think it's kind of neat what they've done with their heating situation. I don't think it's necessarily a necessary innovation in the sense that there are other ways to achieve a similar thing with less steps, I guess. But, you know, it is what it is. For the price point, I do think it's a really nice option. You still are able to get something like a Breville dual boiler for just a couple hundred more, or like a Rancilio Silvia for a few hundred more, or you can get like a Profitec Go for quite a bit cheaper. So it's in this area of like, you kind of, the aesthetic needs to be a big thing for you, because what you're getting in cup and what you're getting in performance is not that much better than something like a Profitec Go, and you get so much more advantage from the Rancilio or Breville that it sits in kind of a weird location. It does do a good job, and my friend and engineer, Tate Mazer, who's a fellow YouTuber, he enjoys his Stone as well. He's done some fun mods to it that have made it worthwhile. But if you're wanting something that is very simple, not an E61, doesn't have any frills, just does it, no temperature control, no pressure control, nothing like that, for, you know, a little over $1,000, then this might be for you. If you like the aesthetic, then of course. It's built really well, so it's built to last. You don't have much worries there. And as you saw on the inside, the components are nice. Is this like the best at the price point? Actually, maybe, because the price point itself is kind of in the no man's land of where it's like just some cheaper E61s, and I'm not a big fan of just a normal E61. When you kind of look around for what is the best bang for my buck, you know, you can get a Gaggia Classic Pro for $500 and you can modify it. You can get a Profitec Go for like $750. You can get the Rancilios, the Brevilles, all these different things that are just giving you different capabilities in the cup. Of course, this is built better than a Breville dual boiler. Do you want more capability, or do you want something that's just out of the box, it just goes and you don't really control it? For full transparency, this was sent to me by Stone about a year and a half ago, so before I started buying all of my equipment, but I will be putting this up in a competition on my Patreon for someone to get for free. Thank you so much for watching the video, for all the support. I love making videos for you all and conversing down below in the comments. But anyway, that's enough for me today. I hope that you brew something tasty, and cheers.